With that, Chair now recognizes Mr. Cicilline.
Thank you. I want to begin by thanking you, Chairman McCall and Ranking Member Meeks, for giving us the opportunity to explore this important issue. And I really want to thank the four witnesses, both for their service to our nation, but also for helping to inform today's discussion and for being with us. From the genocide against the Uyghur population in Xinjiang to the 2021 crackdown on democracy and the rule of law in Hong Kong, we've seen a glimpse at the values of the People's Republic of China is trying to impress upon the world: a rejection of human rights, a commitment to authoritarianism, a silenced press, and the abandonment of the rule of law. Those values are antithetical to our own and must be confronted globally by American leadership, diplomacy, and investment. And in taking up this important work in today's hearing and those in the future who are working on these issues, it's my hope that we can do so in a way that doesn't promote or advance xenophobic anti-China rhetoric, which we've seen lead to an alarming increase in hate crimes against Asian Americans across the country. We simply cannot allow this committee or others to give that rhetoric any oxygen, because the consequences are too dangerous and too serious. I want to begin with you, Mr. Schiffer. The PRC's repression of Uyghurs and other ethnic minorities is global in nature, and we've seen the PRC pressure governments in the Middle East and in South and Central Asia to cooperate with or overlook its campaign to intimidate, harass, detain, and deport Uyghur refugees and the diaspora members around the world. And there was a recent Wilson Center report that documented over 5,000 cases of Uyghurs facing intimidation and worse. So I'd like you to speak to what USAID and the State Department are doing to urge nations to prevent the harassment and detention and deportation of Uyghurs and other ethnic minorities on their soil in the face of this kind of tremendous PRC pressure and really demands that they're making, and what role we can play in Congress in supporting the work that you are doing.
Thank you very much for that question. We have at USAID, working with our colleagues at the Department of State, just launched a new international religious freedom and human rights assistance activity to work with members of the Uyghur community outside of the PRC and to try to provide them with the support that they need navigating this very, very oppressive environment that the People's Republic of China is trying to create for them, both inside the PRC, but also, as you so rightly pointed out, all around the world. We regularly engage with our partners and allies in conversations about what their governments can do as well, as we look to align, as Secretary Crittenbrink offered, to make sure that the international community is fully engaged on this issue, to speak out on the PRC's genocidal actions in Xinjiang and to support the Uyghur community wherever they may be.
And is there anything we should be doing additionally to support that work?
Well, I certainly think the congressional leadership over the past several years, including the legislation that the House has moved forward, has been an important part of creating the momentum that we need to be able to continue to press back against the PRC. So I would certainly look forward to working with you and your colleagues to continue to raise voices on this issue.
Thank you.
Congressman, would it be okay if I address that question as well? I did just want to underscore that in response to the genocidal actions in Xinjiang, the United States has designated 12 persons under global Magnitsky sanctions. We've imposed visa restrictions on another 7. We've coordinated with the EU, UK, and Canada on the imposition of sanctions as well. That would be the first point, Congressman. The second point, anytime we learn of Uyghurs who have been detained or harassed abroad and are threatened with forceful, involuntary return to China, we've engaged with those governments to try to stop that action. We will continue to do so. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Nathan, just quickly, I know there's a lot of evidence that the Belt and Road Initiative is sort of running out of steam and financing for projects is becoming more difficult. Many countries are now struggling to repay loans. Would you just speak to what the Development Finance Corporation is doing to finance projects that are in this position so that countries have an understanding that there are other options out there to deal with their needs?
Thank you for the question. For sure, when I travel and meet with leaders in the developing world, they're actively looking for an alternative, and we need to be there to present it, whether that's in the Indo-Pacific, Africa, Latin America. Countries are actively seeking alternatives that are high standard, that reflect values of the private sector, and don't burden them with debt. I think they've found out that often projects that are funded by the Belt and Road Initiative or by the PRC, state-controlled entities, turn out to be inappropriate for their local conditions and frequently not of high quality, and leave them with burdensome debt loads.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Secretary Crittenbrink, I want to take you down a stroll down memory lane here to fall of 2019 when China realized their first case of the Wuhan virus. Now, it wasn't until January of the next year until they reported it some weeks or months later. And then in February, their top bioweapons expert took control of the lab. Now, the mantra from the press and from the party in the current administration is that it occurred naturally. And of course, people like me, and speaking on behalf of myself, but the millions of Americans who saw all the evidence in front of them that pointed to the lab as opposed to it occurring naturally, those people were vilified in the public. And the new administration used the information to frighten Americans and confuse them and to distort the facts. Based on that, I'm just wondering, does the State Department have any irrefutable evidence that the Wuhan virus came from the wet market in China? Irrefutable evidence. Do you have any?
Congressman, I would point to comments that National Security Advisor Sullivan made on Sunday. He stated that there are a variety of views in the intelligence community.
I know there are a variety of views, but the American people have been taken for a ride for 2 years, more than 2 years over this, and I want to know what evidence the State Department or you have that is used to debunk people's opinions based on what they see and what they know and what is reported as fact. What evidence do you have a bat from the wet market? Does the State Department have one of these bats?
Congressman, I'll state again, there is not a definitive answer that has emerged from the U.S. Intelligence Community on this question.
I'm not asking.
Some elements of the IC.
I'm not asking, sir, I'm not asking about differences of opinion. You work for the State Department. You're the undersecretary, right? You're almost in charge over there. And the State Department speaks for the United States of America. And Americans across the country were ridiculed and vilified for having a difference of opinion. So with all due respect, sir, what facts do you have? Do you have the pangolin where the virus jumped from the pangolin to a human? Do you have it? What facts do you have? Do you have any facts whatsoever to support your claim that the virus occurred in the wet market as opposed to the Wuhan lab? Any? Well,
Congressman, again, I'll state, if you look at what elements of the U.S. intelligence community have said, some have pointed to say they come down on the question that it looks like it was naturally occurring. Some have come down on the other side of that. Some have said we don't have enough evidence to judge. Again, I will say in conclusion, the intelligence community does not have a definitive answer on the COVID origin question. President Biden has directed from the beginning of this administration to take all necessary steps, including all elements of our intelligence community to get to the bottom of it. But the candid assessment.
Fair enough. If there are difference of opinions, then what authority does the State Department or this government have to refute the opinions based on facts that we do know? Because there are no facts at all that it occurred in a wet market. There are wet market outside of Wuhan, right? There are zero. We all know that, right? But there's plenty of circumstantial evidence, if not more, because a bunch of it was destroyed. We know they destroyed the samples in the lab, right, so that nobody could see them. But if that's the case, will the State Department at least acknowledge acknowledge that they were wrong, and apologize to the millions upon millions of Americans that they disparaged for their opinions based on what they know happened in 2019 in the Wuhan Institute of Virology? Will the State Department acknowledge it and apologize? Will they ever do it?
Congressman, what I will acknowledge and commit to is to doing what the President has said, that we'll use all elements, including in the IC, to get to the bottom of this. But as we
And when they
stand right
get to
now,
the bottom
there is
of it-
not a definitive answer that has emerged from the
Mr.
Intelligence
Secretary,
Committee.
when they
Yes, sir.
finally do get to the bottom of it, if they ever do get to the bottom of it, knowing that the Communist Chinese destroyed a bunch of the evidence, knowing that, if they do get to the bottom of it and they do determine that it is the Wuhan Institute of Virology, will they apologize? Will this State Department apologize to the American people it disparaged?
Congressman, the President has directed his team that we will share with Congress and the American people what we learn. I'll just reiterate, there's not a definitive answer that has emerged from the intelligence community on this question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield.
Thank you.
And let me just say, when we were in the minority, we published a report finding by preponderance of the evidence that did originate from the Wuhan lab. And I feel the latest intelligence has confirmed our opinion, and that can be found on the House Foreign Affairs website.